So our top story tonight, there is money everywhere, and the state of Pennsylvania knows right where to find it. The state is raking in $200 million in levies and taxes from the fracking boom, and that money is pouring right back into the communities responsible for it. States like New York and California, by the way, are hammering the rich to fill those fiscal holes. Can more states follow Pennsylvania's lead and stop just bleeding the everyday worker dry? For more on this, I'm joined by Robert Bryce from the Manhattan Institute. Robert, thanks for coming on the show. First of all, I mean, this is quite a windfall. When you look at the individual towns, I was reading a story about Cumberland Township in Pennsylvania. They raked in $1 million. That was half of their normal operating budget. They went out and they bought a fire truck, a police cruiser, a new pavilion. I don't know if you get that at Home Depot or what the deal is with that. They also bought a ride-on mower. I mean, these are fabulous items. Could other towns and states be doing this?
The boom is on everywhere, Melissa, in all the states that are producing oil and gas. Pennsylvania has had big political fights over whether to have impact fees, such as they're doing, and distributing that money into the communities where there is a lot of drilling. Other states, though, are using the severance tax model. And if you look at the latest census data, in 2012, severance tax revenue in those states was up by 29%. I mean, we're seeing huge increases, huge, really windfalls for oil and gas producing states. Okay, let me slow you down a little bit, because I don't
think everybody in our audience knows what a severance tax is. Are you saying that the way this is being distributed is different? In other words, you know, it's based on how much your town is actually producing, or is it going out evenly, or what's the point you're making?
Severance tax, great. I'll slow down here. Severance taxes are levied on oil and gas production, and it's generally a volumetric levy. The volume of gas, the volume of oil that's produced is assessed a tax. Different states have different percentage taxes that they impose, but in the state of North Dakota, for instance, they use the severance tax model. Severance taxes are now providing about 56% of the entire North Dakota state budget. So the shale gale is having huge economic impacts, very positive ones, for multiple states.
Now, I look around the country at other places where they're really hurting for cash. New York comes to mind. You look at California. They have the natural resources that they could actually harvest to plug some of these gaps. I mean, New York, for example, could see revenue of up to $1.4 billion by 2020. That's according to the Manhattan Institute. And that's, you know, if they just pulled in the revenue that could be generated by fracking. California, $4.5 billion. What are the odds you think these states get on the bandwagon?
Well, I'm not holding my breath for New York, Melissa. The state has been dithering over the issue of fracturing now for a long time. What's more interesting, in my view, is what's happening in California. Just last month, Governor Jerry Brown, who has long been one of the leading environmentalists among state politicians in the U.S., he was asked about hydraulic fracturing. Let me read you the quote. He says, "We want to get greenhouse gas emissions down, but we also want to keep our economy going." Brown was clearly, in my view, leaning toward doing more oil and gas production in California, and there are huge resources there.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, just in the past week or so, I think it was, the EPA came out with a new study saying that they had gone back over the data, and when they looked at the emissions that came from fracking, they were actually 20% lower than they had previously thought. So maybe if the EPA is softening its stance on fracking, which, I mean, this was their study, their paper, they're the ones that came out and said it, maybe that would give California's governor some cover to rake in some of this money?
It's a great point, Melissa, and it's a key one, because we've heard for many months now from the hard left, the green left, Sierra Club, Greenpeace, et cetera, claiming these huge numbers of natural gas emissions into the atmosphere. And because natural gas is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, they were claiming, oh, natural gas is just as bad as coal, et cetera, et cetera. Well, no, the EPA said, in fact, this new data shows that very much lower emissions than they expected. So it's clear natural gas is having very positive impacts on the environment if we can just let it run.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, Robert Bryce, thanks for coming on.
Thanks a million, Melissa.